Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to start a new reading vlog, and that is gonna be for July. And I thought I'd quickly show you what I'm currently reading, what I have planned to read, and yeah, just all that kind of stuff. So currently I'm reading On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I have 1.5 hours left before I finish that, and so far I'm absolutely loving it. I love the kind of themes it discusses, and I think it's still a very entertaining book while also, bringing up a lot of good points. Then I'm also currently reading The Two Towers with my partner, and we're currently, just started the part with Frodo and Sam, so we still have a way to go with that. And this month there's also a Lord of the Rings readathon going on, but I'm not like actively participating in that. I just, I will have my eye on it to see what the discussions are and stuff like that. Talking about readathons, one book I definitely will read this month is If We Were Villains by Amal Rio, and this is the pick for the Dark Academics book club, so this is going to be the third book for that book club, and since this has been on my TBR anyway, I already got it and I'm very excited to read this, but I think for now I will just wait a little bit longer because the live show is right at the end of the month and I don't want to, forget all about it. And then I still have 2 books from the library that will have to go back at the end of the month. One is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and the other one is A Long Way to Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Both of these are the German translations, and I think these are the books I will, read first, so I can definitely get them back to the library when they're due. And then one of my goals has been to reread the Shadow Me books, so I can finally read the last one. It's kind of sad because I have the first trilogy in, I think, the American edition, and these are the British editions, but, well, that just happened. So yeah, I really want to reread these and finally finish that series off. So I don't think I will be able to reread the whole thing this month, but we will see. I will, focus on the other books first and then jump into Shadow Me, I guess. And yeah, apart from that, I would really like to participate in the reading rush, but since that's still a little bit ahead, I have not chosen my TBR for that yet, and I'll probably do separate videos about that and not include it in this vlog. So that's all for the catch-up. Now I have to decide which book I read first, and it's not easy, to be honest. So I just finished the Hunger Games prequel, which was a very big book, but one I flew through. And so I'm a little bit hesitant to go into the next big chunker because it is 550 pages of sci-fi. But I also crave just like simpler entertainment. So I don't know if Brave New World, is easy enough for me to read right now because, stressful work and stuff. So, which one to choose? I think I will start with Brave New World, and if I feel like this is too much right now, I can still, bring it back to the library and get it out at a later point in time. Because both of these books I had checked out before lockdown, so they've been here for a while now. And yeah, so Brave New World it is.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
So all of these beauties will go back to the library now. And so here is my new stack of library books, which I just checked out. I tried to get some smaller books for the booktubeathon, so I have a couple of things to choose from. So we have The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, Fairest of All, this is the Disney villain origin story kind of thingy. They had some other ones as well. I think they had 2 other, The Beast from Beauty and the Beast, and one other that I forgot. Oh yeah, obviously Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Then I have this, this is a graphic novel. Yeah, it doesn't say if this has an English translation, but it was originally published in Japan. Then we have Things We Say in the Dark by Kirsty Logan. This looked so interesting. and The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So the day before yesterday, I started Brave New World. Today is the 3rd of July, and I am not that far in. I'm not even 100 pages in yet, but the book isn't that long, so I hope I can finish this off quite quickly. So far, I'm not really impressed by it, I have to admit. It's a lot of racism right at the beginning, which really threw me off. And also, it's not really a feminist book, to be honest. So, yeah, I was debating on whether I really wanted to read it, but I just have such a hard time with DNFing, so I will continue. And also, my partner already read this, and he said that he liked the middle part, but the beginning and the ending were quite bad. So I don't know what to expect because, as I said, it's not that long. We'll see. I just keep you updated on that one. And then I also started Felix Ever After by Case and Callender on audio, and I am really enjoying that book so far. I think I'm a little bit more than an hour into it, maybe 1.5 hours. So we just had the incident, and it's basically a book about a trans boy who's also a person of color. And the incident is when during the kind of summer part program, whatever, of a school, someone put pictures of him before transition up in the school. And yeah, that's kind of the incident, and that's what sets off the events now. So that just happened, and so I'm now getting really into the story, but I really liked it so far. I really like that Felix is very unapologetic, and he is quite angry, but for a reason, I feel like. And, this is a story about a teenager. So he just turned 17, and I think for that it's very believable. And so I'm enjoying that one a lot. And yeah, that's my reading so far. Not that great, but I hope it will get better. So today is the 6th of July, and yesterday I finished Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And I had a lot of problems with this book. I must say that I wasn't the biggest fan of 1984, and I know that that's not a very popular opinion, but I had my problems with that one as well. And I feel like this book is even worse than 1984. I had a very long discussion with my partner about it yesterday because he also read both of these books. And I think what my problem with these kind of dystopian stories is that I don't see the point because I was comparing it to other stories that I liked. For example, The Handmaid's Tale, which wasn't a fun read, and I also didn't rate it very highly, but it's a dystopian story that I believed. Oh, I have this fly here. This one, I don't believe. I don't see what would happen to our society that we get there. I mean, when I think about all the stuff that is going wrong with our society today, I think we have like tons more of dystopias out there waiting for us than this one. And one problem with that is, and I think Huxley himself had this problem, this is kind of a utopia. It's not really a dystopia. And I feel like he couldn't decide for himself what he thought this is. So we're left in the dark as well. And I have read a couple of reviews of this book, and some people were like, oh my god, the first couple of chapters left me sick because it's just so disgusting, this world. And then other people were like, well, yeah, you can definitely see that Huxley himself didn't hate all of this world. And there is, right at the end, a chapter where two characters discuss this world. And you can, when you follow the discussion, you feel like the guy who's in favor of this world actually wins. And he makes so many good points, to be honest. But that's just one problem I had with this, that he doesn't really decide what it is, and so you don't know what he's actually trying to tell you. But one thing I like or dislike about dystopian stories is that they show us a path that our society could actually take and how we can fight this today. So let's take The Handmaid's Tale, for example. This is a dystopian society that is based on sexism that we already have, and I can see very easily how that happens. Like, we have these flashbacks in The Handmaid's Tale that show us the beginning of that world, basically, of that change. And I was sitting there being like, oh my God, this could actually happen. I can see this happening. This one, I don't. I mean, he says that this is 600 years in the future. And I don't know which path the 1930s could have taken to get there within 600 years. I just don't understand. And also, this does not build upon any kind of oppression or inequality of people that already exists. This one and 1984 as well are based on the oppression of white men by some kind of state or system. And I don't know how that would happen. Because as we can see today, white men are still not oppressed by anyone and anything. So why? This is so unrealistic for me, and I just don't understand why people love reading these very unrealistic stories just to feel like we're living in such a great world now, because this is a dystopian and we can see how bad it would be if these white men were oppressed too, just like all the other people in this world. And so we think it's so great. We live in this world where white men are not oppressed, but basically everyone else. So that's just something that annoys me so much with these dystopian stories of that kind of time period and written by men. Had to change my arm for the ranting. And then I also compared this to Fahrenheit 451, I think it's called, by Ray Bradbury, which I really enjoyed. And the difference is that in that world, the character realizes that there's something going on that is evil, and he actually takes a stand and he says that he doesn't want to be part of that society anymore, even though for him personally it wasn't very harmful. And I feel like this book is quite similar, where we at the beginning follow characters that have a great life, basically. They're on the top of the hierarchy of this world, and their problems are pretty basic, and they even seem whiny. And then we get this newer character somewhere in the middle of this book, and he comes from outside of that society, so he can see the flaws of it, basically. But then again, he is also not really a oppressed character in a sense, because it's very hard to talk about this without spoiling everything. But he basically grew up outside of that society, but was basically a member of the society, and he was harassed for not being really an outsider, which is very hard to describe. So yeah, he was basically the one white man who had to grow up with all the really oppressed people, and they hated him for it. And yeah, as I said, I just, this is so hard for me to wrap my head around, because I don't know what I should have learned from this one. Like, what can we do today to never get to this point? And I don't really have a good answer for that. And he doesn't give you any answer to that. And that's not a good dystopian for me. It's just not. And then also, I didn't like any of the characters. They were basically all whiny bitches. So I think for now I will leave my rant at that. I thought about rereading the kind of introduction to see whether that gives me any clarity, because he wrote that, I think, 10 years after publication. But overall, I'm just disappointed, and I decided to give this 2.5 stars because, you know, there's so many horrible things. As I said, 2.5 stars. So now I think I need some light reading because the next weeks will be very stressful, and I decided to go for Shadow Me. I will finally start. So my camera just died, and I just had a look at the introduction again, and yeah, it doesn't change my mind because yeah, I feel like if a person could not imagine a world 600 years from his own, where there was no more sexism and no more racism, it's just sad, basically. And I just really did not like that. So, did not like this book. Sorry. So it's the 7th of July right now, and I'm halfway through Shadow Me, the first book. And I am thoroughly enjoying this reread. I feel like I forgot some smaller things about it, but I still remember all the main plots up until now. But I think the rest of the book is a little bit hazy, so I do remember a couple of things that will happen, but I'm not quite sure where the first book cuts off, to be honest, so it's fun to reread. I just really like Tahara Mafi. I don't think that Shadow Me is the best book of hers, or even the best series, but I just really like how raw her writing is, and I think for a character who has been in isolation for almost a year, I think it's okay that Juliet is a bit, you know, confused, I would say, because her thoughts are very scattered, and I really like that about this book. I know that a lot of people don't really care about the writing style of this, but I think it makes sense. So as someone who has been, you know, self-isolating for a while now, I can totally see that your brain gets confused, and it's not like I don't have, you know, contact to other human beings, so I don't want to imagine what this would actually be like and what your brain would actually be like after that kind of time. So yeah, I enjoyed this series, so it's kind of like a guilty pleasure, just fun read for me. So, quick update on my audiobook. I'm absolutely loving Felix Ever After. I'm not quite halfway through, but I love the texting in it. It's so good. It's so good. And it's so kind of angsty, and I must say, I love Declan. I know he's not supposed to be the good guy for the first part of this book, but I love him so much. So I can't wait to see where this goes. It's just so good. So good. So it's the 8th of July, and I just finished Shadow Me, the first book in this series. And as I said before, the reread is really fun. This is a series you can definitely fly through. I feel like it's very easy to read. I know that a lot of people don't love the first book, and I totally see why. It's just nothing that really bothers me, to be honest. I know that a lot of people just don't like the writing style and that. But I do enjoy it. As I said, I do like Tahara Mafi, and I think this was her first book in general. I think this is pretty fun, and it's just such a fun series, and I just love Kenji, so the second he appeared, I was like, yes! I always need Kenji in my life. He's amazing, and yeah, I don't like Adam, so that's probably the reason why I don't like this first book as much, but there are so many intense scenes in here, and if you like angsty romance, this is the way to go. And I always really enjoyed how positive this book is when it comes to, you know, not even sex in general, but, you know, just touching and kissing and stuff like that. So it's just, you know, very okay that these people do it, and I enjoy that, and I think that gets even more as the series progresses. But I always felt like for a YA book, this felt quite progressive and quite liberating, and I also really like that there is a lot of focus on consent. So there, for example, there's one scene where one character says that another character is his girlfriend, and later apologizes because they hadn't actually talked about that and stuff like that. So I just really like this. I think apart from, you know, all the angstiness, it does portray relationships in quite a good and interesting way, and I think in a relatable way for teenagers. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So next in this series, I'm gonna read that novella. I think Destroy Me is the first novella that goes in between the first and the second book. And I think I will not finish that tonight, but probably tomorrow. And then tomorrow I will start the second book in the series.
So we just went to a library sale and I picked up 3 books. The first one is The Likeness by Tana French in the German edition. I don't know anything about this, but I saw the name Tana French a lot, so I thought maybe this is fun, but it's like the biggest kind of crime novel I've ever seen. Then I got A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. And this one, the English title is Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. So this is a very famous series, and I've never read anything from that series or from that author. So this is set during the First World War.
So today is Sunday, the 12th of July, and on Thursday I finished the first story of this collection, which is called Destroy Me, and this one is from the point of view of Warner, which obviously in the first book still seems like the bad guy. I really love that story because I do like Warner a lot, and it shows you that, you know, the writing style of the first book is just very much, you know, centered in the way Juliet thinks, because the writing style in this short story is quite different. And apart from that, we just hear a little bit about Warner that we, you know, things we get to know in the second part about him anyway, but it's just a little bit more fleshed out before we jump into the second book. And yeah, I really enjoyed that story. As I said, I really like him, so I think it's great that Tara Murphy decided to give him a voice as well. And now since Thursday, I have not read anything, but I will now start the second book, Unravel Me, finally.
Okay, so here's the only book I got myself for Wrapup. Ooh. Oh, it's so beautiful.
So today's the 13th of July. I have started this, but I need to do better. So I made it to page 60 so far. And today I want to make it to page 200, so almost halfway. We'll see whether I can do that.
So I just realized that I've miscalculated a little bit and that I will have to read this book until the Saturday of the reading rush. And I don't really want to read it during reading rush because I don't think that I can read it that fast. So to finish it in time, I think I will have to start it today, which, yeah, wasn't what I wanted to do. But yeah, I read 50 more pages of Unravel Me, and then I saw that I would have to read this week because somehow my math was wrong. I was like, well, it's the 13th of July. I still have so much time to read this book. But the live show is actually on the 25th, which I had messed up because I thought it was a week later. So, yay for me. I will put this on hold for now. I mean, it is a reread. I know what's happening, and Unravel Me is not my favorite of the series, especially at the beginning. So yeah, we're gonna switch to If We Were Villains, and I hope that I can read at least 50 more pages today. And then, yeah, I have something exciting to talk about.
So today's the 14th of July. I had such a busy day today. I spent like 6 hours talking to people online and on the phone without pause. Basically, I completely forgot to eat lunch because of that. And yeah, it's just been a long day. But I wanted to quickly check in and tell you that yesterday I managed to read Act 1 of this book. This is in 5 acts, inspired by a play. And so the chapters are called scenes as well. And some of the writing is reminiscent of a play, but it's mostly written as a novel. I really enjoyed this first chapter. There's this part right before the end of, not first chapter, first act. There's a part right at the end of this act where it's set on the Halloween night. And I love the idea for that. I always love a book with a good Halloween chapter, so this was really cool. And since I did do some theater in school and stuff, I just really like that idea. I think it's such a fun concept, the way they spend Halloween. But then we also get some of the early kind of escalation that eventually probably will lead to someone being dead, because that's kind of the setup of the story. So I'm ready to start Act 2 now. I was hoping that I can get 2 and 3 read today, but that really depends on my head right now. So we'll see how far I can get. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. I like reading from the perspective of Oliver. I think he's an interesting character. I really like his position in this friend group, and I think he's a good character to read from. And right now I'm kind of debating who would be the character to die, because right now I'm not quite sure. I could see a couple of possibilities. So yeah, on to Act 2. So I just finished Act 2, and I think this book is actually quite good at building the tension. I can actually feel the kind of almost fear that the characters have. And I really don't like conflict. So I guess this is very hard to read for me, because there's a lot of conflict and violence in this act. And wow, the ending also was wow. And so far what I like about this book is that I have basically no idea where it's going. I have some theories, but I feel like they're, just built on tropes and not really hints or something like that. So yeah, this is actually very good so far. So I finished Act 3. I think compared with the beginning of this book, in this act I don't really know what's going on. Like, the beginning was so intense. Like, the first 2 acts are so freaking intense that you just can't look away. I feel like Act 3 kind of lost momentum now. We had a couple of, breaks in the plot. Like, they had kind of vacation during Thanksgiving and stuff like that, where I felt like nothing really happened. I mean, I guess something happened, but, I just felt like it was a little bit pointless, this act. So yeah, I'm excited to see the last 2 acts, if they can just pick up momentum again and pull me in again, or rather this just fizzles out now. So today's the 17th of July. Yesterday I finished the 4th act in If We Were Villains. And I must say that unfortunately this book has kind of lost its drive for me. I am now in the last part. I have about 60 pages left, I think, so I will definitely finish this tonight. But yeah, I just feel like the first 2 acts were so engrossing, and now it kind of lost its drive, as I said. So that's a little bit sad, but I will just finish it now, and I feel like the question of who did it is not as interesting as I thought it would be. So yeah, it's also quite hard to care about the characters, because you just don't really have a connection with them too much. Yeah, I will have to think about it a little bit more after I finished it. But right now I'm just like a little bit sad that it's just not gripping me as much anymore as the beginning did. And then I also have exactly 1 hour left of my audiobook, Felix Ever After, and this has a romance part in it, and it's kind of a triangle situation, and Yesterday, when I listened to it, some things happened that I did not like. So he is gonna end up with the person that I didn't want him to end up with, but I try to be fine with it. I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, so I think I will finish that this weekend too and let you know my final thoughts. But I was a little bit sad yesterday how it turned out right before that last hour. So yeah, we'll see.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
So today's the 18th of July. I just filmed my Reading Rush TBR, but by the time you will see this vlog, the Reading Rush will be over. I will do a separate vlog for the Reading Rush, so that will not be part of this vlog right now. But yesterday I finished 2 books and I thought it would be a good idea to talk about them now. So first off, I finished If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I must say that in the end, this book disappointed me. I loved going into this, but the ending just lost me somehow, and I think I will give it around a 3.5 star. I'm really excited for the live show next week to see what other people liked and disliked about it. I've heard a lot of people say that they have to suspend their disbelief a little bit, and I definitely see why. I feel like the biggest point is that the motivations of the characters are completely unclear for the most part. So I don't know. I feel like if you really like Shakespeare and the way that Shakespeare plays are overdramatic and you don't always know why the hell the people act the way they do, I think then you will not mind this book. And I think that's how it is supposed to be read. But as a normal reader, when you just like reading, thriller stories and stuff, I think that this one, it's just a little bit too lackluster on the motivation part. For example, the last like 40 pages or something, you find out how the main character ended up in prison, which from the prologue kind of that he was in prison for 10 years, and it just doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't pay off at all. So yeah, that's just something that, if you can say, well, but they were all teenagers and they were so overdramatic and then it makes sense, yeah, of course, but if you read it from a more grown-up standpoint, which I think is what you should be if you read this book, because it's kind of gruesome in parts, then it's just not enough for me. So yeah, the ending just kind of disappointed me. I would say my favorite character was Meredith. I think she deserved so much better. She was always viewed in a certain way by the other characters, and it was just never really rectified, or not enough, I feel like. But I liked her as a character, and I would have loved to see even more about her. And I feel like she was a lot on the sideline of the story. She was kind of made this plot device, but not by the author, but by the other characters. And I think I found that to be very interesting. How she is in the story, and there are moments when she's trying so hard to have agency, but the other characters just don't give it to her. And yeah, I found that to be one of the more interesting parts of this book, especially the later parts of this book, as soon as you know what actually happened, what the kind of crime is and stuff. So yeah, that's my thoughts on If We Were Villains, and I will talk more about this in the wrap-up after the live show, so probably have more thoughts then. And then last night I also finished Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender, and this book I gave 5 stars to. I loved it so much. It was such a good story. I really enjoyed it. And this follows a trans guy called Felix, and he's going to this artsy school, and he wants to apply to a very prestigious college. I'm not really firm with all the American colleges, so I'm sorry if I say something stupid. But yeah, that's kind of the setup, and he's going to a summer program of his school together with his best friend, who is gay, and a couple of other students, and most of them are some kind of queer. Maybe all of them, I'm not quite sure about that. But yeah, so during this summer program, one day he comes to school and there is a kind of gallery of old Instagram pictures of him before he transitioned, and his dead name is also posted under the pictures. And obviously that's a huge attack on him as a person, and nobody knows who did it, and this kind of follows what happens after that, because obviously Felix is trying to find out who did it, and he has a lot of feelings about it and feels very attacked and stuff like that. But then also some other things are happening, and it's just kind of this event that sets a lot in motion, basically. So yeah, I feel like I haven't talked about this audiobook too much, so I thought I'd just give a little bit of context now. But I loved it. It was so good. I must say, this is, I think, an unpopular opinion, but my favorite character was Declan. I loved him so much. He is such a complicated kind of Slytherin character, and I loved seeing that. And I think all of these characters are quite messy. They're all flawed, but I feel like what this book does so well is calling out the flaws that are unacceptable in a way, and forgiving flaws that are acceptable, because we all make mistakes, obviously, all the time. And yeah, this book is also very interesting because Felix has figured out that he's trans, but he still is questioning his identity. And I enjoy that so much because obviously I don't know anything about this kind of experience. And since I never did all the online research surrounding that, I had no idea how many identities there exist within this label of being a trans person. And that was super interesting as well. And I think it's just very important to portray that, and also the way that this book portrayed it, that even if you have figured out a label for yourself, that maybe you still question things and you still don't really know if this is like 100% what you are in a way. So Felix in the beginning of the book is quite sure that he's a trans guy, but then starts questioning that again, and is kind of this kind of fear that people will disrespect his choice in the first place if he admits to still questioning things now. That was portrayed so well, and I found it so interesting and so important. And I think for people who, or not people, but especially like teenagers who are figuring out their identities, this is just such an important thing to hear about, I think. And yeah, I heard people say that they really enjoyed this. There's some kind of happiness running all through this book, even though this is about a very traumatic event. There are so many scenes that had me like giggle and be super excited for the characters and to really feel for them. And this has a very huge part where there is this kind of romance blossoming in text messages, and like me being from the ICQ age. I love that so much. Like, it was so relatable that, you can't say such brave things when you're texting, but then you're in front of that person in real life and you're just like, oh my god. I just really like that so much. And yeah, I definitely have to agree. There's so much happiness, so much joy in this book, and it was perfect. The only thing I did not like is the kind of end of the romance. But I definitely do understand what the author did there. I just wanted it to work out in some kind of another way. But yeah, it's okay. I can't always get what I want, basically. But I did like the messages and the way it all played out and stuff like that. That was fine with me. Sometimes you just don't get what you want, you know? Perfect book, pick it up, loved it. And maybe I can share with you the book that I started on audio today. I'm only like 20 minutes in or something. It's called A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow. So sorry, Bethany C. Morrow is the author. And I'm very excited about this book because it has to do with sirens and mermaids and also I think a Ren fair. So it's very intriguing. I love mermaid books. So I hope this one is good. I really hope so. But that would be my update, my very long update. My arm hurts. So I'll check in with you later. So welcome back to this vlog. You will not have noticed, but the reading rush is over now. Today's the 27th of July, so I have 5 more days left of this month, and I will include these in my monthly vlog. Obviously, I have this week off, which is amazing, but since the reading rush happened last week and next month will be the nudes part of the magical readathon, I thought that I will, prioritize all my other hobbies this week. I have 2 books that I am currently reading that I wanted to mention. One is Unravel Me, the second book in the Shadow Me series. I have about 300 pages of that left, and I would be very happy to finish this before the beginning of August. And then I'm also, I've started this short story collection by Ted Chiang, Stories of Your Life and Others. And I have one story that I've read already, that is Story of Your Life. I read that for the reading rush, but there is, I think, 8 other stories in here, or 7 maybe. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I'm really happy to continue with this book because the story that I've already read was a 5-star story for me, so I hope that this whole collection will be just amazing. So these are the 2 books I'm physically reading. I have also started an audiobook, which I've told you before. I have not really listened to that for the whole reading rush week, so I think I have 7.5 hours left, and I will listen to more this week, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, that's what I'm reading currently, so yeah, now you're all caught up. And if you are interested in my reading rush books, I will mention all of them in the wrap-up at the end of this video. So that will probably be so long, but yeah. As I said, I will now focus on some other things. I'm really excited to play some Sims this week and, watch some movies and catch up on all the YouTube videos I've missed because I have not really watched anything apart from some reading rush vlogs this week. So, yeah. I'm just so happy right now. So it's the 28th of July. I haven't read anything yesterday physically, but I listened to another hour of my audiobook, A Song Below Water. I have about 6 hours left now, so I'm not that far in. But I wanted to say that I think it's such an interesting concept so far. I think it's a little bit hard to get into this book because you don't really know what you signed up for, because this is kind of like an urban fantasy. I think it's set in Portland, which is especially weird since, the stuff that's going on in Portland right now with Trump just being a dick and stuff. I think that was the understatement of the year, but you know what I mean. And so this is like an urban fantasy because there are certain supernatural species that people know of, and some of them are very well accepted. I think they're called something like locos or something like that. And since I'm listening to the audiobook, sometimes it's hard for me with the words because, it's not my... English is my second language, and if I only hear it, sometimes I'm not quite sure what the words are. And so one of the characters is a siren. And since sirens are only Black women, they are marginalized and they are often victimized, and they are also mistreated in like legal situations. Like it's very easy to kill a siren and get away without being accused of murder and stuff like that. And then the other character is a mermaid at a Ren fair. So she thinks she's human, but she likes being the mermaid for the Ren fair. She's very good at swimming and diving and stuff. But as you get into the story, you realize that maybe she's not that human after all. She had a very traumatic thing that happened to her when she was a child, and now her body is going through some transformation that she can't really place. And then the last thing is that there is a gargoyle on their roof, and they're not really considered like living, like human-like supernatural beings. I think they're very mysterious, and reminds me a little bit of like what's it called in English? Storks, it seems. I think back in the day it was said that when you have a stork roosting on your chimney, that this is a sign for luck. And it's kind of like that with the gargoyles in this world. And they have a gargoyle on their roof, and nobody really knows why he's there. But I guess it has something to do with this character who's not a siren, but we don't really know what she is. And so far I'm really enjoying this, but last night there was a scene where one of those girls, the siren girl, got stopped by police, and it was such a horrible scene. Like, my anxiety flared up like so much. Like, I was so worried about that character. You can't even imagine. Like, I don't know what it would be like to feel that way in real life, you know. So whenever I read a book about a black character and they're stopped by the police, I go through all the feels. It's just so horrible. So yeah, that was a scene that really stood out to me, and I had to listen to the whole scene because I knew if I stopped like somewhere in between, didn't know how it ended, I would not be able to go to bed or anything like that. So yeah, that was a lot. And as I said, I just can't imagine what it feels like to have this experience in real life, because I'm really scared of the police as it is, and I have no reason to be. It's just all in my head. But yeah, crazy stuff. So that's what I wanted to mention. Also, I have this huge stack of books here, and all of these need reviews on my blog, so that's something I want to work on this week as well, so yay. And I also played a lot of Sims, and it was lovely. So I'll keep you updated on the audiobook, because, yeah, as I said, it's a little bit hard to get into. I don't usually read urban fantasy, so yeah, I still have to find my bearings a little bit, but I do like the concept. I do like stuff with like mermaids, sirens and stuff. So yeah, excited to see where this goes. So today is the 29th of July, and I have finished another story in this collection, Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. I read the story called Babylon. It is the first one printed in here, and I really enjoyed it. It's quite a short story. It's only, I mean, this is all short stories, but even for a short story in this collection, it's on the shorter side. It's 32 pages, and it is very, very interesting. So it follows a character called something like Hilalum, and he is supposed to go to the top of the tower in Babylon, and this tower is now so big after centuries of working on it that it finally reached the top of the sky, basically. And so he is supposed to go up to this vault of heaven and kind of break a way through that. And it's very interesting because we follow this character on his journey to the tower and then on a month-long journey up that tower. And when he and his kind of colleagues finally get up there, the top of the sky basically is like granite. And so they have to find a way through this, and they want to reach heaven. So the kind of goal is very similar to, you know, the biblical story about Babylon. I don't know a lot about the Bible, to be honest, or, you know, whatever part this is in. But I really like this reimagining of it because, as you may know, in the original story, after they tried to build that tower, God kind of confused the one language that everyone was speaking. And this is kind of like the origin of the different languages, because after this confusion people were not able to understand each other anymore, and because of that they were not able to work together anymore, and so they were spread all over the world. And yeah, that's kind of how the story goes, I think, basically. But this is a very interesting reimagining because this depicts God as someone who's not there to punish, but who knows exactly what kind of, you know, man he created, and who's kind of like a step ahead of them. And I love that. I don't know if I interpret too much into this, but I did enjoy this a lot because I feel like if there is a God, he probably, or she, or whatever, they probably knew exactly what they were, you know, doing with Earth. And what I don't like about the Bible, as someone who's not religious, is that I don't really see the point where, you know, God created humankind only to be pissed at them constantly because they're doing everything wrong and they're always trying to break his or her or their rules. So yeah, I kind of liked that story. It was interesting. It was very interesting. So yeah, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it is a bit short, and you know, you follow quite a long journey to get to the main aspect, I guess, of what the story is trying to tell. But yeah, I liked it. So I'm very excited to read all the other stories in there. Then the other thing I wanted to talk about is my audiobook. I listened to about another hour yesterday. A Song Below Water, it's what it's called. And wow, I just reached such a crazy point. I don't even know, you know, how to talk about this, but basically one of the main characters, who's a siren, she's following a YouTuber girl that does hair tutorials. Who does hair tutorials? Sorry, my English is just not that great. There was just kind of a revelation about that YouTuber girl, and she made a video, and it was just so heartbreaking. I was on the brink of tears. Like, this touched me so much, and I'm just in awe how this book manages to get these very real feelings from me, because usually when I read a book, I don't feel it, you know? I'm not someone who cries easily when reading a book or something like that. It might be so sad, but I'm just not crying, you know? I'm sad, and I know that, you know, the book is sad, but I'm not crying. And this audiobook has now, for the second time, made me feel so much, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So I wanted to come here and tell you about it. So yeah, I still have more than half of the book to go, so I don't know how it will all work out. But so far, I can definitely say that this book is an experience. So yeah, I hope you'll check it out. So I just watched a bookshelf unhaul and reorganization video, and it really inspired me to unhaul some books. And I think I will go through my bookshelves now and see if I can find anything that I would like to get rid of. I'm really hard with getting rid of books. Like usually when I finish a book, I decide whether I want to keep it or not. But sometimes, I have to look at some of the books after a while. So for example, I still have the Ransom Riggs books, even though I didn't enjoy them that much. But they're so beautiful, so I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. So we'll see. I just have a look. Just a casual look at my shelves.
Okay, so this is the result of me looking at my shelves. I think these are the books I want to get rid of. As I said, I'm really not good at it.
So today's the 30th of July. Still, I feel like July is going on forever. Yeah, today I wanted to go to the library and bring all the books back that I've read for Booktubeathon. But then I realized that I wanted to show them at the end of this vlog, which I will record, in the beginning of next week. So I guess my library trip has been cancelled now, and I will do that next week. I still have a couple of books where I need to write my reviews for. And it's mainly old books. It's this one right here. Like, you don't even remember when I read Fangirl. It's been months. And I've just never written the review. And also, Wayward Son. Well, and these two books I read for the Booktubeathon. Reading Rush. Oh, it's a reading rush. I don't know. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to report. I'm still listening to my audiobook. I still think it's super cool, super fun. And it's just so interesting because you have no idea where it's going. So it's definitely a wild ride. I think I have about 4.5 hours left now, a little bit less than 4.5 hours. So we'll see. I hope I can finish my audiobook before I go home to see my parents and my grandparents and stuff, which I will do at the beginning of August. So I hope that I will have this audiobook finished by then, because I will be in the car for a very long time alone. So I will need an audiobook, and it's just such a pain in the ass if you're, driving and your audiobook ends. So yeah, I hope that by then I will have a new one to start, and so I can listen to it while I'm driving. We'll see. You're not interested in this. I'm just making this vlog longer than it needs to be. But yeah, I'm on vacation right now. I just don't have stuff to do, which is great. I'm enjoying it so much. I love being on vacation. So today's the last day of July, and I wanted to give you a quick reading update. So yesterday I finished... I don't know what I last told you. I finished 2 stories in the Ted Chiang story collection. I finished Division by Zero and Understand. And I liked both of them. I gave Understand 4 stars and Division by Zero 3 stars. Division by Zero is a math story, and I just really don't like math. So, yeah, but so far I'm still very much enjoying this collection. It's definitely like very intelligent sci-fi. So I feel stupid most of the time reading this, but it's still so fascinating to me. So, yeah, I will keep you updated on that one. Also, I found out that these stories in here are published or are printed in the way they were published. So you start with the oldest story and then go through. So I have now read the 4 oldest stories, and I have the 4 newest stories left. And yeah, we'll see when I read those. And then I managed to read almost to the halfway point of Unravel Me. This is a reread. This is the second book in the Shadow Me series by Tahara Mafi. And yeah, I'm kind of enjoying it. I love how often Juliet is called out for her bullshit in this one. So yeah, definitely appreciate that. It breaks with a lot of tropes from this genre. So I do enjoy my reread of that. And yeah, I have about 200 and some pages to go. So ideally, I would finish that today so I can start with my magical readathon tomorrow. But we all know that's not gonna happen, so yeah, I will finish this in August as well. So welcome back to the wrap-up part of this video. I'm now gonna tell you all about the books that I have finished in July. And this is gonna be a long part because I think I have finished 11 books in July. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about. The first thing I finished on the 1st of July was my audiobook that I had been listening to, and that was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. And this is her second book after The Hate You Give, and I loved The Hate You Give. I gave it 5 stars when I read it, but I was a little bit apprehensive going into her second book because this one follows a teenage girl called Brie. She's black and she's aspiring to be a rapper. Now, I personally don't really have any connection to rap. I was listening to hip hop a little bit when I was a teen, but it's nothing I'm really passionate about or I know anything about, so I was a little bit apprehensive, being like, is this gonna be a book for me? So I decided to listen to the audiobook, and I know I'm super late with this because already everyone else has listened to it, but I absolutely loved it. We follow Brie as she is, given the opportunity to take part in a huge rap kind of competition, and she's put against another guy and she actually wins, and people are so surprised because she's rapping so well. And so this kind of starts her getting a little bit more fame, but with that obviously there's other struggles. Now also Brie has lost her father. He was a rapper too, and he was actually killed, so she only grew up with her mother, who also used drugs after that tragedy because she couldn't really cope with it. So we have a very tragic family story in the background of this, and we see the family still struggling with that and also with the things that are going on right now. I loved the family dynamic. That was one of the best parts of the book, but I also really loved Brie as a character. She was very unapologetic. She was definitely a loud girl. She was sent to the headmaster's office, or whatever it's called, so much because she would roll her eyes in class and speak up if she thinks that the teachers are saying something wrong and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just overall such a good book and it really surprised me. And there are rap parts in it, so the audiobook is quite fun to listen to, but I don't know whether these raps are actually good. You know what I mean? So yeah, you'll have to tell me because I don't know anything about that. But I decided to give this book 5 out of 5 stars as well. Unfortunately, the next book I finished was not a good time for me, and that is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I went into this hesitant. My partner had listened to this as an audiobook, so when I saw it in the library, I thought it would be a good thing to pick up so we can discuss it, and we definitely did. But with this book, I had so many problems. In the end, I decided to give it 2.5 stars, I think. Yeah. I might even bump that down even more. I had such a hard time with this book. I thought it was so problematic. This is kind of a utopian dystopian thing. I think even the author doesn't know what he actually wrote. It is set 600 years in the future from the 1930s when this was published, and the author could not imagine a world that wasn't sexist and racist. So yeah, that was a fun time. Also, I'm just so over reading these kind of dystopian books that white men were writing, because I feel like they are just so unbelievable. I just don't know what he thought would happen that the world would turn out like that. Now, this dystopian, utopian thing, whatever it is, focuses a lot on Ford as a symbol for industrialization, I guess, and moving away from nature. And yeah, this starts with this very disturbing factory where you get to know how people are made in this world, because there's no such things as conceiving a child and giving birth anymore. It's all industrialized, and so these people are kind of all artificial in a way. And they found methods to create people with different intelligence levels. So they have alphas, betas, and then the lowest kind of caste is epsilons. And yeah, was so problematic because the epsilons were actually described in a way that they were more like apes than humans because they were, you know, so low on that kind of social hierarchy. And yeah, it just all felt so wrong to me. And also this also picks up a lot of like communist ideas and turns them a lot on their head. So for example, one thing in this book is that you don't belong to yourself, you belong to everyone. So they frown upon the relationship just between two people, so you're not really allowed to be in a relationship. You're supposed to switch your partner all the time and stuff like that. And it just felt so weird because this combination of Fordism and communism together to create some kind of utopian dystopia was like, what the hell are you trying to tell us? Like, how is there even a possibility that this will ever exist? I don't understand. And then we're getting to the problematic part, which is the character that we follow at the end of this book. And I think he's, what is he referred to in English? This is a German copy, so I'm not quite sure, but probably something like the Savage or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But he is the weirdest character because he's referred to as, I guess, the Savage, but he's actually a white man too because, yeah, his heritage is definitely white. And there's this weird community that will conjure up kind of an image of like, you know, Native Americans or something like that. And he grew up in a society that is, I guess, inspired by that. And those were the savages. And so he then goes on to live outside of this, like, yeah, little insula of like population that we would, or that reminds us of our society right now. And he would go into this brave new world to live there. And obviously doesn't really fit in there and stuff like that. And then at the end there's this weird discussion with like one of the leaders of this world, and in that discussion you can completely see that Huxley had no idea whether he wanted to write a utopia or a dystopia. He can't decide for himself. So I don't know what he wanted to tell me with this book, but because of all the problematic shit in it, I really didn't have a good time with this. And yeah, I'm kind of sad I read it. So then on to more fun things. I reread Shadow Me by Tahara Mafi. I wanted to reread the series all this year because I still have not read the last book that came out. So I decided to start with the original trilogy and then go on to this second trilogy to just, you know, get back into this world completely before I read the final book. And I finally picked up Shadow Me. A lot of people say that this is the weakest book, and I don't really agree. I totally see how the other books in the series are much more addictive, but I feel like this book is still better than the beginning of the second book. The second book just takes a while to get going again. So yeah, I just enjoy this series. It's so dramatic, it's so fun, and I actually like the way it's written because you have these whole sections that are crossed out. Let me just find a good page. Like here you can see that some sentences are crossed out and stuff. And that's just because this book is very much written as a stream of consciousness kind of thing, where you follow the main character Juliet. And Juliet has a lethal touch. So when she touches someone, they will die. Not immediately, but pretty quickly. And so for all her life, she has been shunned, she has been put away in an asylum, and she has been in solitary for almost a year, when suddenly a guy pops up in her cell. And she has no idea what's going on, but that sets off a whole deal of events. And this book is really about, or not this book, but this whole series is really about Juliet, you know, coming to terms with who she is, and just accepting the power that she wields. And yeah, I love this series for just how dramatic and over the top it is. And with this first book, it's really just setting up. You get to know the characters. it is a little bit slow in the beginning when you're in the cell with her, but it's very important that you understand, you know, where she comes from. And obviously, yeah, that has an effect on her mind. And I just like how this is portrayed throughout the series, you know, with the crossed out parts that throughout the series just get less and less and less. And even in this first book, you see it in the first couple of pages, you still have a lot of those. And then, like, for example, here, there's a whole paragraph crossed out. And as you get on with writing, you find whole pages where there's nothing crossed out at all. And I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, as I said, this is just a dramatic, fun series, and I just enjoy reading it. So I would give this first book like 3.5 stars. Okay, then the next book I finished was the pick of the the Dark Academics Book Club for July, and that was If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. This is a dark academics book. It follows a cast of characters, but mainly Oliver, who go to a special school where they learn to play Shakespeare plays very, very well. So it's kind of an elite school setting. They have like different kind of arts in there, but Oliver and his friends are in their final year of that theater school part, basically. And this is really, I don't know, in the beginning of the book you find out that Oliver has been in jail for 10 years, or in prison. I think it's prison. I always get the two confused. But he has been in prison for 10 years for murder. And at the beginning of the book he has, you know, done his sentence and he gets out of prison, and the investigator who put him away, he visits him and he's like, well, you know, I never believed you did it, and I'm resigning now. I'm no longer a police detective, so I want you to tell me what happened. And basically this book is then Oliver telling this, or remembering how it came to him being in prison, basically, for murder. So this book is interesting if you really like Shakespeare, I think, because it is, first of all, it has 5 acts, and every act is then split into scenes, and you have sometimes the kind of writing style that you may know from plays where you just have the names and then what the characters say, which is something I actually enjoyed, because sometimes reading dialogue in, you know, novels can be confusing or very annoying because it's confusing if you don't know who says what. And I've had that definitely before, where I was so confused and I was like counting, okay, that's that person, then this person responds, and then there's a third person and you're completely lost who says what. Or it's annoying if you have says na na na, says na na na, says na na na, you know? So I actually liked that style with the dialogue, but this book also uses tons of Shakespeare quotes. And I've only read Romeo and Juliet because, yeah, I'm not from Britain, so in our school system we didn't really read like English classics as you know, Shakespeare is, I guess. So yeah, for me this was a little bit overwhelming because you're reading all of these quotes, and if you have no context, sometimes you're like, what the hell's going on? What I found interesting is that there's this part of, I think it's Macbeth with the witches. I never knew that this was from Macbeth, so yeah. I loved the first 2 acts of this book. I thought they were so good. They had such great atmosphere. It was so well done, and you were really getting into the heads of these characters, and you had no idea who was murdered at that point. You were just following them as the group dynamic changed rapidly, and you were trying to catch up with what's going on. And I think, as I said, this book is great for people who like Shakespeare because it's definitely dramatic and over the top, and you don't always know what the motivations of the characters are. But for a novel, this wasn't great. So the last 3 acts definitely lost me somewhat. I wasn't enjoying it as much anymore. I felt like there were so many weird interludes that we didn't need. And yeah, at the end, you know what happened, but you still don't really understand what happened because you don't know the motivations of the characters. And that was kind of unfortunate. So in the end, I decided to give this 3.5 stars. Yeah, it was just disappointing in the end, to be honest. But I must say my favorite character from this book was probably Meredith. I think she could have been so interesting, but then it just wasn't explored enough. So that was kind of sad, but I did enjoy her the most. And then on the same day, I also managed to finish my next audiobook, which was Felix Ever After. And I must say, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Again, it was so great. This is a story about a trans boy called Felix. He lives in New York, I think, and he's going to a school that focuses on art. And he is in the summer preparing for going to college, basically. So he has to apply for college and stuff like that, and has to work on his portfolio. And during this summer program that he's doing, there suddenly are a lot of things changing, basically. And it all starts out with this moment when there is a photo gallery in his school where someone is showing pictures from before his transition and also putting his dead name under those pictures. And that obviously upsets Felix a lot, and he decides that he has to find out who did it. And he has a very strong suspicion who did it and makes up a plan to find out if he's right. And this book was just so good, because it had so many funny, nice moments, and it made me so happy. There was a huge part where he was texting with a person that, you know, they slowly formed a very intense bond. And I loved that. It reminded me so much of, you know, my teenage years and Skype, and no, not Skype, ICQ. And I was just squealing, and I just loved it so much. And also this obviously deals a lot with, you know, being trans and, you know, figuring out that you are trans, but then maybe still questioning your identity. So Felix thought, or he was pretty sure at the beginning that he was a boy, but then he still had times when that label didn't really fit him too well either, and he just started, you know, questioning again, but was also really afraid of talking about it because he was afraid that people would be like, oh, you see, you are a girl. And obviously he wasn't feeling like a girl, he just wasn't always feeling like a boy. And I just really liked that portrayal, and I think it's so important to show young people that, you know, you don't have to figure everything out when you're in your teens. So it's still okay to keep questioning and to keep, you know, working on yourself and just figuring out who you are. And I think for most people that goes on in your 20s and even your 30s. So I really like that portrayal of it, and also, you know, showing how you're just, you know, at midnight on the internet trying to figure out who you are, looking for labels. I just really like that portrayal because I think that might be a reality for a lot of people. Yeah, and just overall, it was such a heartwarming story, but also an important story. So it wasn't just fluff, it had a lot of depth as well, and it was just the perfect combination for me. It was one of those audiobooks that made me feel so much. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the experience of listening to it as well. I think the narrator was perfect for the job. Yeah, it was just so nice. The only con I can say about this book is that I did not like how the romance turned out in the end, just because I don't like that kind of trope. But it was okay with me. I think the reasoning for it was good. It's just not my cup of tea. I like my romances and books to be a little bit different, but that's just me. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, now all that's left are my reading rush books, so I tried to go through them quite quickly. I did separate vlogs for the reading rush, so if you're interested to hear more about these books, you can definitely go and check those out. But I wanted to mention these books here as well because, you know, this is the wrap-up part for the month, and obviously reading rush happened this month. So the first book I finished is this Disney book called Fairest of All, and the author is Serena Valentino. Just want to make sure. Yes. I hate that it's not printed on the cover. Like, Disney, what's up with you? So this is the story of the Wicked Queen that we know from the movie Snow White. And this is a villain origin story for her. And I must say I did enjoy this. I even enjoyed it more than I thought it would. This is definitely a very quick read. It's very large font and it's only 250 pages, so it was great for a readathon. I don't think that this book will stick in my head or anything, but I did like some aspects of it. And as I said, I thought it would be much worse, to be honest, just from, you know, this being Disney trying to get money from us. So I got this from the library. I wouldn't pay money for this. But yeah, this follows the Wicked Queen. She doesn't really have a name. She's just called the Queen in this book. And we see how she met the king, how they fell in love, and how they decided to marry. And that was when Snow White was still a very small child, like maybe 5 or something, or even younger. And how they were just a happy, nice little family, but then tragedy strikes and it all starts to fall apart. And obviously the magic mirror is playing a part in that, and I really like how that was connected with her past. Actually makes sense what's happening with the mirror, even though, I didn't believe it 100%. It was like, I was like, okay, it makes sense, but it's also a little bit weird. And the thing that really I didn't like about this book is that this is a villain origin story, and basically the story is, hey, there were just 3 other villains leading her onto the wrong path. And you're like, what? You know, I don't like it when a villain story is explained with just other villains. That's kind of weird. So I didn't like that too much. But this explores, you know, abusive relationships with your parents and what that does, and also grief and tragedy, and also some form of addiction almost, and how the pressure to be beautiful on women is a very dangerous thing. And yeah, it deals with grief and depression and stuff like that. And you know, it's a small book. You can't really explore these things too well, but I think for what it was, I really enjoyed it. And so I decided to give this 3 stars, I think. Oh, even 3.5. I was generous with this one. Yeah, it's about a 3.5 star read for me. Then the next book I finished was Smith of Wootton Major by J.R.R. Tolkien. This was the last book of the Tolkien Treasury that I hadn't read yet. The Smith of Wootton Major is a short story that Tolkien wrote. It's the last of his works that was published during his lifetime. And it's a short story about this town that has this tradition that every 24 years a cook, who's a very important person in this little village or town, he will make a huge cake, and 24 kids will be invited to share that cake. And inside the cake are little trinkets like coins that are supposed to bring luck. And so we follow one of these children after he ate his piece of cake, and he actually swallowed a little star that will give him entrance into the fairy realm. And so this short story follows mainly this person, and later he will become known as the Smith of Wootton Major. And this is just a very sweet story about fairies and the way Tolkien saw fairy as a, you know, magical country. For him, fairies weren't like these little dainty little creatures that are just pretty and sprinkly and glittery. For him, a fairy was this magical world with very powerful beings that can also be very, very dangerous. And so he tried to portray that in this short story. And this book has a lot of extra material. As you can see, this does not only include a short story, but there's a lot in here. For example, an introduction Tolkien wrote for a book called The Golden Key. He was asked to write an introduction for it, and he did, and it's published in here, but it was never published with the book because of some changes that were made later on. But that introduction was so fun because he's basically calling out introductions before classics as being kind of ridiculous. And he says that he would always want readers to meet a story without anyone kind of introducing them. He said the only introduction a book actually needs is, "Hey reader, this is Smith of Wootton Major. Now go and enjoy it." And so, yeah, he was kind of talking about how he doesn't like the concept of an introduction. And I feel that because I've definitely gone into books and spoiled myself because I didn't know that introductions to classics are spoilery. And so, yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. I decided to give this 3.5 stars as well. The story was cute and I loved the material with it, but you know, it's not life-changing and it's definitely not The Lord of the Rings. Okay, so my camera ran out of battery, but now we're back. The next book I finished was a very surprising read for me, and that was The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. I have read one book of H.G. Wells before, The Island of Dr. Moreau, and that one was like a 3 or maybe 3.5 star read for me. This one, though, was exceptional. I decided to give this 5 stars. I think for a classic, this was so fun, this was so good, I really enjoyed it, I was drawn in from the first moment. So this book follows a character, I don't even know if he has a name. Maybe he has, but who knows. We're following this character who lives in England. Here it says Horsell Common, so it's somewhere close to London, but it's more like a countryside. And this book was published in 1898, so yeah, I thought it was published way later than that, to be honest, when I started reading it. But so you're in that kind of 19th century English countryside, and one day a cylinder drops, and they assume that it is from outer space, and a lot of people are interested in it and they go to see it, and then there is Martians. So this doesn't sound great, but this book was great for me. So you're really pulled in from the first page because you're so, or I was so fascinated by this, you know, connection of like a historical setting for us at least, and a futuristic idea like people coming from Mars. And the connection of the two was just so wild to me, and I really enjoyed it. And one thing in particular that was so funny is how he always described people who were shocked and you know, the chaos around him, stuff like that. He would always say that someone came running and he had lost his or her hat and stuff like that. So a lot of hatless people in this book because yeah, that was a expression that showed their shock back then. And also what I liked is you probably all know about the tripods because of the movie. That was loosely based on this. And so when he describes the tripods in this kind of, you know, 19th century setting, he actually uses a little milking chair. I don't know what it's called in English, even though this is an English copy, but you know, the little tripod chair that you sit on when you're milking cows, and he's using that to explain what a tripod is. And it's so funny because obviously now we see completely different things when we hear tripod. And yeah, it was just such a fun book in that sense because, you know, these two things just clashed so wonderfully. And then the other thing I really liked about this is how H.G. Wells called out, you know, colonialism. That's a hard word for me to say, because he's basically showing his white audience of British people how horrible it is when there is suddenly a force that is so much more powerful than you are, and you can't really stop them, and they're there to take your land. And I loved how he did that, and he made it quite explicit in some instances. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it, especially after reading Brave New World, which was published so much later and was still so much less aware of the problems of the time. Yeah, this was so refreshing and so fun, and I loved following that character who was an intellectual and had to realize that in this kind of apocalyptic world, his intellect wasn't really helpful. And actually the scientists don't really survive that long because, you know, that's just, yeah. I just really enjoyed this, and I liked following him around this world that is so rapidly changing, and there's a lot of, you know, situations where like, oh my god, he's probably going to die. And for a couple of chapters then you're also following his brother who is in London, and how, you know, the kind of city folk reacted to the aliens and stuff like that. It was just so fun. It was so fun, and it was, you never, except for like the funny descriptions, but you never felt like you were reading a classic. It was just so good. I really liked it. Gave it 5 stars. Would highly recommend H.G. Wells. I'll definitely read more of him. Okay, then one book I can make quite quick. I finished Cheese Sweet Home, the 4th volume, and this follows a small cat called Chi, and she was found by a family in Japan because she lost her mother, and this family took her in. This is the 4th volume of this little manga series following Chi and her new family, and in this volume they are moving house because the flat where they were living, they were not allowed a cat. So at first they tried hiding Chi during the first 3 volumes of this, and with very fun techniques as well, but in this one they finally decide to get a new flat where animals are allowed, and so all of the neighbors also have like fun pets and it's just very funny and super cute, and she is just the cutest. I mean, look at her. Also on the back, it's just so cute. So yeah, and this is also colored in, so yeah, it's just such a fun little series, and luckily my best friend gives me one of these every year for Christmas or my birthday, so I usually read one of those during the reading rush. And I think I gave this one 4 stars because I think from all the volumes I enjoyed this one the most so far. So now it's getting more serious again, because the next book I finished was The New Jim Crow. This is a book about racism and the mass incarceration in the US. It's written by Michelle Alexander, who's a Black author as well, and she is also some kind of professor. It doesn't really say on here, but this book is great. I found this so interesting because this focuses on the justice system of America and shows how racism is deeply ingrained in the system. Now, this is called The New Jim Crow because she tries to make the point that the way the war against drugs and the mass incarceration are used in the US are reminiscent of the Jim Crow era and the kind of legal restrictions that were happening back then. So this is a book about systemic racism in a very specific system, and her point basically is that if you don't go against this system, you can't really change anything. And I really enjoyed this book a lot. I thought it was so interesting. She had such a good way of giving you numbers and statistics, and then also giving you specific cases. And so you had the perfect mixture of knowing, oh wow, these are like specific cases that, you know, show what she's trying to tell you, but they are also not just, you know, single cases. There is a huge number of these kind of cases, and she could have picked any one of them to, you know, talk about this. And I really enjoyed her look on this war on drugs, because that's something that I don't know a lot about. Like, the US, as I said, is not something that we're taught about a lot. And I don't really know a lot about US history, to be honest. And so this was very interesting because it gave me so many new ideas and so many insights. And yeah, I just learned so much from this book. It had a really good structure as well. And I overall just think that this did everything it tried to do, and this is always a great thing to say about a book. So I think I gave this 4.5 stars in the end. I didn't give it 5 stars because since this was not written for international readers, a couple of points are not strong enough to understand for someone who's not from the US. And she addresses that in her kind of introduction she wrote for international readers, because this is a translated copy. And she says that, hey, this book was not written for international readers, so it's not something where I say it's her fault or anything like that, but still something that, you know, didn't work out for me that perfectly, especially with the history part. I still feel like I get stuff confused all the time because it just wasn't as clear as I needed it to be to fully understand the concepts and what happened when and stuff like that. So it was easy to follow while I read it, but I still couldn't tell you about it. Yeah, and I think that for if this was written for international readers, I think that part would have been even more in depth and a little bit more round, basically. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope a lot of people read this because this is crazy. This stuff that's happening in the US today is crazy. And I think this is also a great addition to stuff you're reading for your Black Lives Matter TBRs or whatever. So I hope someone feels inspired now. And the last book I want to talk about is this one. I think in English it is called Barefoot Gen. This is a German translation. This is a graphic novel about Hiroshima. And it was probably the best graphic novel I have ever read. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It was so horrible, but in the perfect way. Now this follows a kind of fictional character, but it's still autobiographical. So Kaiji Nakasawa is the author. It's probably Keiji. Not so sure about that. And the main character in here is called Gen, but it still is the story of his family, basically. And in this first volume, it has 4 volumes overall. In this first volume, you're following his family and mainly Gen before the bomb. I hope you all know about Hiroshima and what happened there. And so you really get to know his family. He has a younger brother and an older sister, and I think 2 older brothers. They're not all as prevalent in this story. And then his mother is pregnant as well. So you're following this family and you see, you know, how they're just interacting with each other. And the father is against the war. Now, he says that it's something that, you know, the rich of the Japanese society and the powerful decided to do, and now all the, you know, normal people in Japan are the ones paying the price for it. And he speaks out about that a lot, and so he gets a lot of backlash, and he also is taken in by the police and stuff like that. And this portrays how the whole family suffers because he is kind of marked a traitor, and the whole family is stigmatized and discriminated against because they are supposed to be traitors, because he says that, you know, they can't win the war, that it's practically over, and that they just should stop, basically. And this is all in the month leading up to the bomb, and then the end of this book is, you know, right after the bomb. And that was just impossible to read. This is not for the faint of heart. You will see it all. Let me just say that. So the end of this book was horrible. I was here reading and my partner came in and I closed the book and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was just like, you don't want to see these pictures, like especially not out of context, because it's just something that will just go into your brain. And I just had a physical reaction to the end of this book, and it was just so strong. And yeah, I still can't believe that this happened because of a graphic novel, to be honest. It's just amazing. I hope everyone checks this out. I will definitely get the other 3 volumes and read those as well, because obviously if you finish the first volume, you're at the worst possible point, and the other 3 volumes I think will give at least a little bit of closure. But in the back there is a little biography of the author, and so you know some things that happen with this family later on, apart from the things you could see in this volume. But yeah, I definitely think it's better if you read the other volumes too, just to get something else, not to stop with this scene in your head, basically. So yeah, amazing, definitely amazing. So that would be all the books I finished. Now I wanted to quickly mention the books I'm in the middle of at the end of July, and then I can let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. So I'm right in the middle of Unravel Me, the second book in the Shadow Me series by Tahereh Mafi. And then I also read the first story, Destroy Me, in this little collection, but I haven't read Fracture Me yet because that is set after Unravel Me. And I've read the first 4 stories in Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. And then I'm in the middle of my audiobook, A Song Below Water, right now, which is an amazing audiobook about black sirens, and would highly recommend as well, but you will hear more about that in my August vlog. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't 2 hours long, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!